Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our seminar tonight. My name is Peter Mullen, and I'm one of the counselors and coaches and financial literacy um, folks who are here at American Consumer Credit Counseling. Glad to have you with us. We do 2 of these webinars every month. We're going to get started with today's topic. Again, my name is Peter Mullen. I'm a financial counselor, work at American Consumer Credit Counseling, which is a nonprofit in the Boston area. Our whole mission is to provide free financial literacy, counseling on many different types of topics, and help people get out of debt is one of the many things we do for credit card debt. So that's kind of where we stand. We've been in this business for about 30 years and very glad to be kind of up with these great topics that we hope will be of use to you uh, uh, in so many different ways. So we're glad to have you with us. We've received your questions, and wanted to tell you it's always great to get your questions at the beginning. We ask everybody, what are some of the challenges that you face? And so we're going to incorporate those where they're appropriate. But I also want to say to you that we would love to have you provide further questions or comments as we go through this. My colleague Maddie is on with us, and she will help me keep honest here in terms of the chat and things that you might want to comment as we're going through this. This is a pretty sticky subject, one that's kind of challenging, and I know that some of the comments that I received, and I can recognize them all. I've been married myself for about what 40 something years, 40, almost 42 years. So a lot of these things I can certainly recognize. So I think we will hopefully deal with this very seriously and have some good ideas for you at the end. So let me tell you about our agenda for today and what we plan to do. And I just wanted to also say at the end of this, you'll receive a copy of our webinar as a video. You will also receive this PowerPoint deck so you can review that yourself. And then also evaluation. Please tell us what you think, what worked, what you'd like to maybe see in the future. We'd love to hear that. This is always great to have you on board with us. So let's get started with our session today. So the purpose that we have today is to deal with some financial challenges, and these are very, like I said, very sticky, very difficult. And I use the word confront on purpose because many times with this topic, the financial discussions apparently are some that a lot of people do not want to talk about. It's very, very challenging. So I say that they are often hidden in a relationship. They're often faced or hidden or ignored altogether. So we want to talk about some of that, get some of that out in the open, and then to recognize some practical steps and ideas and methods and how you can begin to hopefully turn some things around and rebuild some of that trust. It really is about a conversation. There's no other way around it. A conversation, communication is the way to go. So we're going to start out by talking today then about what are some of the statistics about this, what are some of the things that people face, what are some of the challenging areas. Maybe you might self-identify a little bit with some of these things that are here, and I found some of them quite surprising. Want to talk about how you might deal with this day to day, but then most importantly, end on the whole, how can we make this work? What can we do? What are some conversation starters? I wanted to just share with you some of the comments that I received. We always ask, like, what are your greatest challenges? And the comments that I received from the 21 people that responded was getting on the same page. That's the challenge. Having a conversation at all. Like I said, a lot of people just don't talk about it. So that's the challenge, okay? To find goals that we agree upon. Absolutely. These are some of the things that would be great. One who likes to spend and one who likes to save. I recall once having a client from one of my classes who said, look, I'm trying to do a budget with my husband, and he does not want to do one. He doesn't believe in any of this. And yeah, I have to admit, it was a very challenging thing to try to give advice to somebody of which the two of them have totally opposite views. But I had to say that this was kind of cute. I normally don't read the things that were said, but I thought this was kind of good to add to this whole equation. what was the challenge you're facing? The person said, I don't even know. I haven't combined finances with anyone yet. I've even dated before. I'm trying to be proactive, and that's why I'm taking this little class. And another person said, I'm newly married and I'm unsure the best way to manage funds. So I think it's great if you start thinking that way before you're married. I think you might be able to avoid some challenges later on. So let's talk about some of the things here then, and then go on with not only what people face, but also hopefully some good ideas for you on how to potentially deal with this. Okay, that's what we're here for today. So managing money as a couple. I like to start out with this. We are gathered here. How many times we heard that? For richer or poorer, to love and to cherish. And then I'm asking, is it till death do us part? I say that because it's interesting that we so often will talk about in relationships many things. You remember when you first dated or when you first were together? You talk about your dreams, your hopes. You may even talk about children. You talk about religion, where you want to live, all these things. But the one thing so many people don't talk about is money. So I guess I ask the question, why? Why won't people do that? So I want to start out by talking about some of the challenges that people face with that. And I think it's important to look at that more clearly before we start thinking about solutions. Because obviously there's some reasons why we don't and won't talk about money. So let's start with some information, some statistics that maybe we know, maybe we don't, but I thought they were very interesting to see. So what do some of the statistics show? And these are coming from a Harris poll just at the end of last year. Some of the things we're finding out, for instance, this isn't just marriages, by the way. This is just couples who try to combine their finances. 43% admitted to some kind of a deception with each other, whether it's hiding the money or hiding the purchase or hiding a bill, um, opening a credit account or accounts that they haven't talked about, even to the point where they'll lie about it, how much they earned. I had a couple once, and again, I'm not a marriage counselor, I'm a financial counselor. But as I was trying to help a couple in talking about, they were trying to save money to buy a house. And so I got to asking them and talking to them, well, how many credit cards do you have? And the two of them are sitting in front of me, in front of my desk, and one of them said 4 credit cards. Well, the other one spoke up and said, not really. We really have 5 credit cards because there's this one I didn't tell you about. And then okay, then how much money do you have in the bank? So we can start with as maybe a down payment. Well, one of them spoke up and said we have like 5,000 in the bank, and then the other one spoke up and said, well, there's this other account that I never told you about that we have as well. So again, I'm not a marriage counselor, but I recognize that one of the important things about finances, and especially if you're going to combine your budgets, is openness and honesty. That's the only way you can really begin to move ahead. So we're going to talk about some of those ideas, but let's talk about other examples first. And again, I would love to get your questions and comments. I'll open it up in a minute and just ask you to please put them into your questions, okay? And then Maddie will help pass them over to me. So what else have we seen in the past? Other examples? Just coming from the same Harris poll, 19% hid cash from their spouse, 13% hid a statement or a bill, 11% hid a bank account, 9% hid a major purchase. So people are really working hard, 20%, 10% of folks of marriages or relationships are doing this. So here's the part that I found kind of strong. And a number of them said this, a number of the things I read. And just so you know where I come from, I go through a lot of different reading of articles, of books. I try and glean any book on a topic that we're going to do, like this one today. Look to all the sources I can, newspapers, articles, blogs, and some of my regulars who I always go to. They're all listed in the references of this if you want to look further. But thinking about financial infidelity, think how strong a term that is, I thought. And so let's think about that for a second. If you're not sharing the basic things about money, or you're hiding or lying about it, think of what it does to folks. It often causes breach of trust. It's you're not confiding on something that's very, very critical in your relationship. It's a lack of honesty. It's not being fully open, and so, but one of the things that I recognize here, and this is true, it could be for nefarious reasons. You're trying to hide something because maybe you're embarrassed. And when they ask people why they did it, that was often cited. They just don't want to share because they're embarrassed about things, and things from the past, or things that they've done, or maybe someone likes to buy something, like maybe it's shoes or something. They don't want to admit that they keep on buying them. They have a thing about continuing to buy things, and so there's so much behind this. And so let's look a little bit further as to what is going on here. The key takeaways that I found in reading all of this is deceptions about one's finances is rather common. It's actually more common than you think. And the disagreements that people often have about money, unfortunately, for those who are married, they say this is what's said. I looked it up again through other sources. This one coming from a source called marriage.com, that money is responsible for about 41% of divorces. Or not money, but the discussion or lack thereof. So, but I guess the bottom line message is it's a very essential thing to deal with. And when I mentioned those quotes at the beginning, I'm not getting to the point where I'm saying you need to do a prenuptial agreement. However, understanding where each other comes from in your attitude about money, in your use of money, in your savings of money, those things are very, very important. Third one, another one here said, a third said it caused less trust in the relationship. So I think we've made the case that this is very important. But amongst all this tough news, there was some really good. Here was an upside of this whole discussion, and that is 19% of the folks said it actually caused them to become closer. So sometimes the discussion and the dealing with a money issue is the very thing that makes you begin to say, hey, we need to sit down and deal with this. We need to talk about it. So for some folks, this actually helped them. So this isn't all a negative story. A lot of it kind of gets back to how you approach it and what you're trying to achieve. As you'll see some other quotes that I have coming up, some people use money discussion almost as a wedge to get back at some people, but you can use it also as a way to come together. It all just depends on somewhat how you use it. The bottom line is it's a very important aspect of a relationship. 34% also said that because of this, they resolved to communicate more clearly and more openly. So yes, it can lead us either way. And so I think of it this way, when you are challenged with discussions on money, how do you deal with it? It's your choice. Does it lead to discussion, communication, and empathy? Maybe you come to learn that your partner has a challenge, and can you deal with it empathetically? Or does it lead to more distrust and more separation and deeper deception because you've been found out? You look harder to hide it. I guess everyone deals with this in more of a different way. So let me go over what I'd call some challenges to overcome. First, I wanted to say this whole issue does create a challenge to have a combined accurate budget, because that kind of was the whole initial premise of this back when I said I met with somebody after a class. The question came up is, as a couple, when you're trying to do a budget, which is I've advocated all the time for so many other seminars, it's the foundation of understanding what you have to spend, what kind of decisions you can make with that money that's not already encumbered someplace else. The budget is the rock solid foundation needed for that. So logically, a couple who really want to be together and make goals together, for instance, they have to be on the same page about a lot of the way their budget works. But obviously, we're not fully, so let's talk about some more issues and challenges we have to come. So I'll raise this up and then I'll look again for your questions and thoughts for this. To add to everything else, and whatever reasons we have for why money is such a challenge, we also bring to our relationships, whether again you're married or in a new relationship, or the couples that were looking just to get married, or you're just going dating. The fact is, people bring things to the table. So these may be things that you maybe you didn't share at the beginning. You were embarrassed about it. So we have to think about this. How are you going to deal with these things if someone does tell you and you start to find out, they get uncovered, that they have all these past debts, they've had a past bankruptcy, or they have little or no credit. Now, in some cases, these won't affect you. For instance, credit, as an example, is kept separately. Even if you get married, your credit isn't combined. You have one credit score over here and another credit score over here. However, if you do go to buy a house, as an example, and you're both trying to work on the mortgage, they will take the lower of the two credit scores. That's an example of where they don't combine them, but they take the lower of the two. So, yes, someone's history may come to light as you start to try to do things together, as an example. When you go to try to deal with your debt, it becomes very obvious that people are on the same page, because you begin to get encumbered with debt. And if one person likes to spend and one person likes to save, as in here in overspending, you will find that it's a challenging thing to meet your bills each month. So some of these things can be hidden and they may not come to light, but some of them eventually will, and I think it's important for us to deal with them. So let me give you an example of one of these that I think I tried to put it into a way with myself. I'm talking about my own self, my own example, that was actually a revelation for me and helped me. So I look down this list and you'll see anxiety about money. So I know that I've had a discussion with my wife about the way that she grew up, and it helped me understand a lot more about why we see things differently for money. Because she was brought up in a household where she was very anxious about money and had a different view of it. I guess maybe her parents fighting about it, or never had enough, or I know that when she made money at various places, she handed it over to her parents, and she never really was able to use a lot of it herself. So she had a different view of it growing up than I did, and my parents didn't talk much about it at all. But certainly today, I understand much more why she looks at things differently in spending than I do, because she had a whole different attitude growing up than I did growing up. So understanding that helped me to be much more empathetic, much more understanding as we make financial decisions today. So I think going into the past can be a challenging thing, because you may uncover some landmines here and there, but at the same time, it may help increase your own understanding. So, credit card debt is an example I've come to learn as a counselor. Just one other example, and I'd love to get any comments or questions you have. I've come to learn as a counselor now of a number of years that credit cards, right, is an example of where a lot of people who have grown up and were never taught. Their parents just didn't teach them about credit cards. One woman I talked with, she was, I think, 45 years old, and I asked her what she knew about credit cards, and she said, when I was growing up, my when I needed money or needed something, all my mother would say is go to your father's wallet, take out his credit card, and buy things. She didn't really make the connection, as I've come to learn that a lot of people don't, that you've got to pay that back. Now, for some of us, we may say that's crazy. That's obvious. You got to pay it back. But I've heard more than a few people tell me as they went through college and they handed out credit cards, they never understood and never were told, never made the connection that when you charge things, you got to pay it back. Credit cards are taking out loans. It's a loan that you have to pay back with interest. And I don't know how people miss that, but I'm in the financial literacy field, and I know that that's true. A lot of people do miss it, and a lot of people do misuse it as a result. So I'm going to stop here for a second and ask if there's any questions. And I would love you to put some in the chat. Are there any questions? And I'll wait for a minute, but I'll also going to write some, tell you out some other things that people said here, just to add to this, to the interest here. Of the 21 people that responded on the challenge, the kind of things they said. What is the challenges that you're facing? Basic agreements. We have different priorities. We have power struggles over money. A lot of people said this same thing over and over. They said simply just being on the same page. Well, I can tell you that it doesn't come automatically. So where we're heading to on our solutions should begin to be kind of obvious if we want to really deal with finances as a couple. It takes communication. You got to understand and listen where the other one is coming from without being critical. This is the hard part. Listen and begin to understand, oh, I see why you spend on that. I see why you are coming from that perspective. Other things that people said, spending on silly things, not keeping track of expenses. Well, that isn't necessarily a couple thing, I'll just say. A number of people said not keeping track of expenses, but that's really just a financial management thing. Anybody who wants to get a hold of their budget and manage your finances, you have to know how much you make and how much you spend. So that's regardless of being a couple or not, as an individual, you need to know that. It becomes more complex if both are not agreeing to do that together. If someone spends and keeps no track of it, it gets hidden. If someone spends and doesn't and purposely doesn't tell the other person, the only time you catch it is when you look at the credit card bill. So I know from my own perspective, I've come to learn, again, maybe because of my wife's anxiety, I said that earlier, she checks our credit statement all the time, checks our checking account statement all the time. Not just because of me, because she doesn't trust me, because she's looking to make sure that everything's correct, that somebody hasn't used it when they shouldn't have. Again, which is another topic, identity theft and fraud. So there's not a bad reason to check on your credit. You should be. But it can become a source of tension if it's used as a weapon against each other. So this is a good topic to talk about, and I would say it's important for people to recognize it's challenging, but still critical to face. If you don't face it, it'll be hard for you to make progress on things, and we're gonna go that way. So again, to summarize so far, I'm not advocating necessarily a prenuptial agreement, which some of the newlyweds on the line or some of the new relationships might think about. But I am saying that certainly in due time, you have to begin to talk to understand where you're coming from, or else you'll never really be able to manage a combined budget and a combined household. It'll be a source of lots of tension and misunderstanding. And then you won't fulfill the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, I think, is to have a budget that works for the household, that works and is fair for the household, because you're having hopefully combined money in and combined expenses out. But then there's other ways to get around that. So let's talk about some of that. Okay. So managing the day to day. My last little bit of talking about issues before we go to the solutions. I didn't hear any questions or see any questions coming in, so I'm going to move on. Managing the day to day. So let me ask you this. Have you ever heard this one before? But I make more money than you do. That's why I'm spending. So with each one of these, think of it, you talking to the other person, and think of this as you listen to each one of these. Is this the chance for you to have a fight, or is this the chance for you to make things right? And I think that's a choice. When you say this, is this a chance for you to pick a fight with someone, or is this a chance for you to kind of get together and make it right? So follow along the rest of these. When did you get those shoes? How do you say that? When did you get those shoes? I don't remember ever seeing those before. That's accusatory. It means you slipped them in here somehow. It's kind of like saying, I never saw you buy them, or more curious, hey, those are nice shoes. When did you get those? It's a totally different thing. Or it's an opportunity to say, hey, you know, what's this all about? Why is that a priority? Did we agree on that? Or maybe you've heard this one. We can always just charge it. Well, if you're someone who's very cautious about managing your money and making sure you're clear on, where your money goes, um, you might have a revelation if someone just simply says, "Oh, we can just charge it." Maybe it's kind of a cavalier view of money, which you don't have. Okay, let's stop and talk about it. Because if someone overspends, spends, and doesn't think about the impact of charging things, then you need to be on the same page. So yes, people say we need to get on the same page. Sometimes it's in the day to day. That's your opportunity to bring that up. Where did that money come from? Again, depends on how you ask it. Where did that money come from? All of a sudden, $100 bill comes out. I never saw that before. Do you have hidden money, or where did this come from? I'm curious. Are we asking the questions so we can pick a fight, or we can make things right? Are we trying to pick a fight here? Hey, my credit score is higher than yours, or I make more money than you. Is that implying that therefore I can spend more? Is that what we're trying to say? A relationship is very complex. We all know that. But money, again, can act as something that either divides you as you deal with it, or pulls you closer together in the way that you approach things. Again, as I'll come to some solutions in a minute, hopefully that they will work for you and give you some good ideas. Let's talk about a few more. Look what I do with my money is private. Now, this was cited a lot when I read a lot of things that about why do people have challenges, is because some people like to keep things private. So this is actually going to lead us to one of the many solutions. One of the potential solutions for you might be this: keep some pooled money, some money you agree upon. And the key word is you agree upon together. I'm a believer that whatever you agree upon as a couple, it's your business. Whatever you agree upon, it's your rules, it's your life. So if you agree upon a pooled amount of money, and then some separate money over here for one and some separate money over here for the other, if that works for you, I say go for it. There's no rule that says you got to put all your money in one pot. So again, having some say, some privacy, is an important element, and that's one of the sources of some of the contention. So there's a lot behind this, but some of the reasons go back to kind of human nature. We all like to have some level of autonomy, even in a relationship. You want to have some level of your own privacy, your own control, your own say on some things. And so this is a kind of leading us to some potential solutions here. We need to save and budget before we spend. Okay. Again, and this was something that I had to learn in my relationship, and something that I now am very happy my wife helped to teach me, which was much more of, you don't charge first and then try to catch up after all the time. You try to think and plan ahead, which is about, it's much more responsible to say, we know that we want to buy this television set for $500 or this laptop for $1,000, let's say. But instead of always simply saying, let's just go out today and charge it, which is a short-term, immediate, gratification thing, is to think much more together about how we can plan meaningfully to that time. Financially, it's better. You're together on it. You're both in on maybe the brand that you get and how you both are going to save money because you've looked ahead, you've done some research. So, again, these things can either be brought as a way to bring us together or to separate us. Last one is a typical one you might have heard. You just keep on spending, money doesn't grow on trees. Sounds like something your parents might have told you as well. But, we get into a lot of these cliches that often happen. So I'm going to end with this statistic here, which I thought was pretty amazing in a way. Again, according to Fidelity now, 40% of the couples don't even know what their partner earns. So somehow this touches a nerve. Money touches a nerve with folks that a lot of times they don't even want to tell the other one what they make, or they hide it somehow. So again, the end note for all this is, it's not all negative and doesn't have to be. It's challenging, but it does depend a lot on how you approach it, your attitude, your view of, am I trying to fight about this, or am I trying to make this an opportunity for us to learn more and grow together? So I'm not seeing any questions or comments coming through, Maddie, at this point. So I'm gonna move on. And here is now the parts of hopefully some good ideas on how we begin to fix some of the many challenges that we see. And again, my role as a counselor is to try and give ideas, suggestions, options. I hope that within what we've talked about, there may have been some self-identification, some things you've looked at and you say, yeah, that's something that I do. That's something that, or my significant other does. I can recognize that now. But let's look at some ideas on how we can fix them. First and foremost, said over and over and over again from all the sources I've read, is you got to have communication. I know that sounds basic, but I don't know of any other way to do it. You've got to communicate, even if you don't always agree. It's not saying you got to agree. I don't have the word agree here. I said you've got to talk about it. So you've got to recognize that every one of these events that happen, whether they're hidden from the past or right in today, something happens and all of a sudden something shows up. Like I said about the shoes, I look at my wife's shoes one day and I don't normally do that, but all of a sudden I see a sparkly pair of red shoes. And I go, where did those come from? Now the typical response is, oh, I've had these. I've had these for years. So again, I don't know if we're playing a game there or not, but for them, again, do you trust? Do you have faith? But communication and understanding is the most important starting point, because by communicating, you're helping to see each other's perspectives. And what I've said before, which is very true, and I am learning this more as I'm in this business, people bring stuff to the table, a whole upbringing of how they have viewed money, of how maybe there was dysfunctional view of money, maybe there was no talk of money. I mentioned the credit person with the credit card who wasn't ever taught a thing, or people that didn't realize they had to pay them. It's unbelievable what people know and don't know. So you got to ask. And by having an understanding, you begin to give people the benefit of the doubt. Are you there together as a couple because you want to work together, or are you there because you want to fight about things? By asking and understanding, you're seeking to be on the same page. So people said we need to be on the same page. You're right. You do need to try to be on the same page. Right, related with all this another band-aid here is honesty and transparency. So just ask yourself this question: what would you expect of somebody else with you? Wouldn't you want somebody you talk to be honest and transparent with you when you ask a question? If you're the one asking, where did this money come from, or where do those shoes come from? Wouldn't you want an honest answer? So, I mean, it kind of is one of those reciprocal things, or do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If you want honesty and transparency, you got to give honesty and transparency, which comes up in a point in a second, which is one of the ways to maybe do this is admit your own mistakes. Maybe that's a good starting point. When I was younger, I used to do these things. I used to gamble and I lost a lot of money. That's kind of where I came from, and that's why I view money this way. Well, you're being honest and open about it. Working together to rebuild trust. If you've broken the trust, if you have, in fact, hidden things from each other for any one of the reasons we've talked about, one of the things you have to go back to rebuild. It's not going to happen automatically. I think it happens through effort and through the effort. And again, I'll have another idea for you on how you can do that. But it means you purposefully set some time and some energy out to try and make sure that you are going to rebuild the trust. And what I've learned also in life kind of goes with this. And the same thing goes with credit, by the way, just a little aside. It's much easier and quicker to destroy trust than it is to build trust. It's much easier to bring your credit down, just as an example, your credit score down through mismanagement, overdoing bills, overspending, than it is to bring it back up again. It's like pushing something up a hill. It just is much slower to do it. Takes more effort to get it there and takes more time. Same thing with trust. It's unfortunately easy to break, but harder to rebuild. So compromise. Recognize that we have different views, and this is what I was saying about admit your mistakes first. So one strategy may be to say to the other one, look, I'm not perfect here. I've made these mistakes and I did hide this money, but I'm not doing that anymore. So can you please tell me more about what it is you're thinking? What is the attitude that you have about money? What do you think about saving? What about some of the goals we're trying to do together? So, I mean, make it a communal thing that gets you back to the things that are important. So, this is a great tip. Focus on the budget, more neutral facts. So, what can we do to take the emotional aspect out of our discussion? And it's not accusatory. You did this, I'm better than you, I make more money than you, my credit score is higher than you. Get the emotional part out of it and say, what are we trying to do as a couple? Are there certain goals that we're trying to make as a couple that we need to manage our money? We'll never get that trip that we're trying to do unless we kind of get on the same page about not buying things, crazily for the next 3 months. We got to put some money away. So focus on the facts. What do we make? What do we both make? What do we have? And then what are we spending it on? A budget is nothing more than a record that helps you to know where the money goes. It's not saying why it goes there yet. It's just stating this is where it goes. When the two of you look at it, then you can make decisions about, is the money going to the right place? That's the communal budget. But other than that, maybe you have your own separate ones. We'll talk about that in a minute. But goals is next. Setting goals. What do you want in 5 to 10 years? Let's try to move beyond some of the things we're dealing with right now. In addition, let's be dreaming. Remember I said at the very beginning, when people are first getting married, many times they're thinking, or you're dating, you're first thinking of the dreams we'll have together, or the big house we're going to live in, and how we're going to have 3 kids and all these other great things. Those are important things that bring you together and get you focused in the same on the same page and in the same direction. So again, those are things that can unify you. Acknowledging your own upbringing and your attitudes is what I was mentioned before about anxiety as an example. Um, a lot of this is just being open about it. We all have things in our past, some that we can control and some that we can't. And I think the wisdom of a couple is to know, to be honest and open, and then recognize what they can and they can't change. And within the financial world, it's the same thing. I recognize fully, and this is why I embrace this discipline so much. I'm very bullish on the things we can do, on the improvements we can make. Now, can I go back in the past if I have a client who maxed out, 5 credit cards, and that's what they did 2 years ago? No, that's history. That's happened. But I can do something from this point on. We can manage money from this point on, and how we spend and how we manage and how we build. So everything is possible. And somebody even asked me this in a class the other day. Well, like, can you tell me, is it possible that my credit report will never get fixed? And I said, no, of course not. We can get it fixed. May take time, but there's no situation that we can't get out of. Okay, some specific ideas. And again, I'd love to hear some more questions or comments if you have them. But here's some specific ideas coming from again, various sources. I often go back to one of my friends, Trent Ham, and some others. Here they are. Some a little outside the box, some are very basic. How do we get on the same page? Schedule a budget date. Yeah. Do you remember those days when you were dating? If you did do that, or if you're about to date or about to get married, remember how we're on our best behavior? And we begin to actually talk because we love each other. We want to do the right things, right? Well, let's get back to that. Maybe once a week, maybe on a Friday night or on a Saturday night, you sit down and have a glass of wine together, or a cup of coffee, or a cup of tea, and you're on your best behavior. And you talk with the other. What are you thinking? How can I please you? What's important to you? And this will lead you back to the subject of money, because money, think of it, money is a mechanism. Money shouldn't regulate our lives, but it is in fact an item that helps give us access and opportunity. So these are things we should talk about, because how much money you have makes certain things available to you or not. Education, or certain types of trips, or certain types of not just things but experiences. So hopefully we're on the same page and you begin to make a point of getting together. I like this one. I think this one works a lot. I think this is a great way to do it. I know it's worked in my marriage, and it's worked for a lot of people I know. Have both a combined account and separate accounts. There's yours, mine, and ours, right? Now, I know that sometimes people even ask these kinds of questions, but I make more money than she does. Shouldn't I be able to get more of this? Shouldn't she get less? What if in my situation right now I'm working, my wife isn't right now? Should she get nothing and I get it? No. You got to come to an agreement again, whatever works for you, but come up with something that works. You got to deal with these issues. I like this one a lot. This one's really good too. And that is that you don't have to wait for the regular budget date. You can also recognize, as you're making spending decisions in the moment when something has happened, that can be an opportunity. Again, it depends on your attitude. Either it's an opportunity for you to then stop and say, wait, you're telling me we can just charge it. Well, I have some issues with that, because when we just charge it, we're simply borrowing again. And I know that we've had a lot of debt. So, you know, um, I have some challenge. You talk about it. Maybe you deal with it then, or wait for your date, whichever way, but just get to talk about it. Don't let it simmer, because if things simmer below the surface and they fester for a long time, it's going to come out somehow. It's going to be a challenge. This is similar to the one up above. Agree on communal bills. Maybe one of the other ways that you do it is you begin to say, these are the pooled bills and these are the things we take together. But, for me, as an example, I like to do a lot of woodworking, right? And my wife, she likes to she has this thing having to do with Poshmark. It's where you resell clothes. We have separate interests. She does her thing, I do mine. But we also have a pooled family thing. So all the communal bills come out of that, but some of our separate bills will come out of our own separate accounts. Again, we worked it out for us. I think that you can try and work it out for you. So again, think of your marriages, as I often do. This is one of my conclusions in life I made a long time ago. Have you ever looked at people who are married, and you sometimes, or just couples, and say, I don't know how they get along. I don't know why they're together. But you know what? I end up by saying, it's not my business. If they have worked out what works for them, that's all that matters. As long as they've worked out what works for them. It's their relationship, it's their agreement. If they've come up with their own financial agreement, fine. If it's pooling things together, if it's keeping some parts separate, if it's, recognizing a 70-30 split, whatever it might be, I say fine. As a financial counselor, I want it to work. I want them to meet the goals that they've said that are important to them. Last thing I have here really for us is kind of interesting. This comes from Michelle Singletary. She writes a column which I often go to and look for. I thought this was kind of cute. Again, maybe you ask this on your date, but this is the kind of thing you ask in a nice way. Now, this is maybe the kind of discussion you get to. Hey, how much money do you make? 40, what did I say way at the beginning? 41 or 40% of the couples don't even know. Have that discussion. Hey, what do you think? Should we have a joint account, separate accounts, or both? Let's talk about it. Will it make a difference if one makes more money? Maybe you're asking these questions before you get married. And again, I don't necessarily say it's a prenup, but I say that it's the discussion at some point comes out. It may be better to deal with it sooner rather than later. How do we approach debt that's brought into the relationship? I gave you an example of kind of the past. There's all kinds of things that can be brought in a relationship. You might be best to own up to it, and it's very difficult to find that out after the fact when you're trying to do a combined household. Then you come to realize someone's bringing $20,000 of debt to the table, or on the other side, I've seen this happen. This has happened. Someone who brings a lot of savings to the table, brings a lot of savings they've worked on to the table, and then the other partner spends it all. There's so many challenges here. Again, through discussion, hopefully you get to those common understanding. Who's going to pay the bills? Now, I know in my life, I've had times when I've been in charge. I've had other times, most of the time, when my wife has been in charge. But somebody pays the bills. Someone's the one managing the money, seeing it day to day. My wife takes care of that right now. So that's just an agreement that we have. Works fine. And then this last one's kind of cute. I heard this from, I don't remember which one I got this from, but one of my many sources. How do we de-escalate a disagreement? If we get to the point where we're starting to fight each other, sometimes humor comes in. So hint, maybe you guys come up with your own secret word that helps you bust the challenge that you're facing, right? So for me, I just gave an example of one that my wife and I always use humor many times, and we understand each other. Maybe all these years we understand each other more. So I don't know if anyone has seen the movie Airplane, but there's some great lines in there. Like one of them is something like, surely you don't mean that. And the answer, of course, is I do mean that, and don't call me Shirley, right? So many times we will say things like start out by saying, well, surely you didn't just buy that. And then the answer, of course, is, well, I did buy that, and don't call me Shirley. And it breaks it breaks us up. It makes us kind of break the ice of whatever we're dealing with. So you come up with your own words, your own humor that helps break that. I'm going to come to a summary right now. We still have a few minutes. I will take any question if there are any, but this is kind of my summary for things today, maybe your takeaways, and it's not all negative. It can definitely be very positive. So talking honestly and openly about your finances is challenging. I'm totally admitting that. What is tough, and this is one of the revelations here, is that some people never talk about money, never do. And when they do, they deceive each other. So it's getting gets kind of turns a difficult challenge into even a more difficult challenge because, as I said, other things happen. If you're deceiving each other about this important thing, money, then it can lead to other things: mistrust, lack of honesty. How do you then trust them? That's why they called it financial infidelity. It has some of the same psychological impact, right? But focusing on your monthly budget and your longer term goals can be productive, can be a way to bring you back together because you're on the same team trying to make things happen. We're together trying to save for this future thing. For my life right now, here's an example. My oldest son is going to get married in April. So there's a coming together of the finances and the efforts needed to make that happen. So that's just an example of a future event we're focused on, and our money and our time gets focused on that event. And there's other things that you might have in your lives that you begin to focus on that makes it productive together. So another one method that works for many couples is to communicate about your mutual communal needs, but retain some independence as well. So again, that's back to the yours, mine, and ours. There's ways that you give each other some space. In a relationship, that's another whole topic. A little bit of space, a little time, a little bit of freedom to, you know, you know, I know that I do the woodworking, which I mentioned earlier. Well, I have downstairs in our basement, I'm working on a lot of things, rebuilding an office down there and putting in a bedroom down there. Well, that's kind of my thing to do. And my wife may have other things where she's online or she's working on her business. We both have our own independent things that we do, but we obviously have a lot of communal things we do as well. Taking the time to listen to each other's perspective, especially your own each other's histories, will help us to educate ourselves about why that attitude comes from it where it does. So it helps a long way in helping you to manage stuff today by understanding what the baggage or the background was of the other, how we're all brought up. And I know this is one of the challenges for me as a financial counselor or as talking in classes. I never know if I have 20 people sitting in a financial class that I'm doing about budgeting. They're all bringing different perspectives about what they think about money and budgeting. Some hate the word, some have never done it. Some parents have never told them a thing about money. And yet the more I understand, the better we can make some progress. And finally, as money events and decisions or issues arise, this is that whole idea of that can be a great opportunity to build upon your trust. So you begin to recognize that, and I like this quote, this idea: you turn potential landmines into gold mines, right? Because you're taking an event and instead of making a negative thing, it becomes a positive thing, a chance to get closer and to understand your perspectives. The last statistic I want to bring you, which is I think a good one, is for those that have combined their finances and did deceive the other, when they finally got to talking about it, 64% of couples who did do that actually have learned to resolve and to communicate more openly. So sometimes an initial challenge can lead into a very positive ending. And so I hope that this was helpful and instructive, challenging, but certainly not impossible. I leave you with these references here. Some of the people that I go to again, some great sources, and you'll have both these handouts for you. You'll have the tape if you want to review it, as well as an evaluation be sent to you. So I'll ask again to anybody if there's any questions or comments you'd like to come up with. I'd love to try to answer it.
I'm not seeing any questions so far.
Okay, thank you, Maddie. I will also say to everybody again, just to remind you, my name is Peter Mullen. My email is pmullen, MULLEN, at consumercredit.com. So if after this time you want to write me any questions or comments about consumer financing, things we've talked about, I'm glad to try to address it. I've often gotten emails after the fact. Some people try to drill down. That's great. I welcome that. I wish you all the best. I thank you for your attendance today and for your comments ahead of time. We do have seminars coming up, like I said, 2 every month. If anyone ever wants to know what's coming up in the future, simply write me. And I thank you all, and thank you, Maddie, and thank you for everyone for attending today. So good night for now.